Good morning and welcome to the Committee on Ways and Means. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Backus. Assemblywoman Brown-May. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Gorlow. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Howdigi. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblyman Miller. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Yeager. Chair Monroe Marino.
And I am here. Will you please mark Assemblywoman Backus present when she re-arrives and Assemblyman Miller absent excused. Members, I'll remind you and those joining us in the audience to turn off or mute your electronic devices. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. If you'd like to call in, our call-in number for today is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 850-5305-6422, and then please press pound. We are at the end, or coming to the end of session, so we do have an agenda for today. However, members, as I said, every day this week, we will be recessing. We will not be adjourning this morning. We will probably come back in 1, maybe 2 more times today to get the work done and make up for last night. We have a lot on our calendar. So I ask everyone to be patient with us. And with that, we will get started. Our first bill on our agenda for today is Assembly Bill 158, which revises provisions relating to emergency medical services. And we welcome Assemblyman O'Neill to the table. We almost lost you. Kind of a bouncy start to the morning, huh?
You want to talk about looking uphill? Good morning, Chair. We've got to have some humor today, seriously. It's one of many Fridays this week, I think, we'll have. So, getting on to the work, though, at hand, I'll say good morning, Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm P.K. O'Neill, Assemblyman District 40, and I'm here today to talk to you, hopefully very quickly, about Assembly Bill 158. It was previously presented in Commerce and Labor, where it was passed out in unanimous vote. So we're here to talk about the money. The only fiscal note that is remaining on this bill deals with I think it's a $10,000, $5,000 a year fee for joining and for the administration of the interface to the compact. Unless you have questions actually on the compact itself, I'm available for any questions. Or, Chair, if you do want me to go through the bill, I'll be available for that too. But it's at your direction. I'm just trying to make this as quickly and hopefully as painless as possible.
Quick and painless is good. I believe we have a question for you from Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a quick question. I think you said it was $5,000 per year. What does that $5,000 cover?
I think that would best be answered by HHS. They're here with me today. But as my understanding, it's just for the interface to the program to operate the compact, paperwork, and licensings.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Monroe Moreno. Cody Finney for the record. Mr. O'Neill is completely correct. This covers the license for the interface between the two systems that would have to speak to each other.
Software? Okay.
Members, any other questions on, Assemblywoman Backus?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. With that being a interface charge for the software, when we're joining the compact, is there a charge that we would have to pay to be a part of the compact system? Like an annual dues or something like that?
PK O'Neill for the record, not that I know of. There's no indication the compact has not done that, nor have they made any overtures or statements to that effect. It's strictly, to my understanding, for the interface, the software.
Members, any other questions for the presenters? So no other fiscal notes other than the fees that we have for this. Sounds good. All right. With that, I will ask the three of you to go ahead and take a step back. And I'll invite to the table anyone that's here to testify in support of Assembly Bill 158. Seeing none here in Carson City, do we have anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 158? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 158?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 158, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Coming back to Carson City, is there anyone here that would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 158? Seeing none, is there anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 158? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anyone join us on the phone line that would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 158?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 158, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. My name is, for the record, my name is Jacob Dahlstra. I'm with MedX Air One, a air and ground ambulance service based in Elko, Nevada. And I apologize. I meant to hit star 9 for we are in support of this bill. So for the record, we would like to support this bill. For our service, having this compact will greatly improve our ability to attract and get providers in our service to be able to provide 911 service and critical care services for Northern Nevada and throughout the entire state. And as it's been pointed out, there's other states that are part of this compact, Idaho and Utah, which we are able to draw a lot of providers into from those two states. And we just really believe that this will help support our services and better serve the citizens of Northern Nevada. And appreciate you taking the time to consider this bill.
Thank you so much, and we will move your testimony to support. Thank you for calling in. BPS, do we have any other callers on the line?
There are no other callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Coming back to Carson City, do we have anyone here joining us to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 158? Not seeing anyone, and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on our phone line that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 158?
There are no other callers to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll ask the presenter if you have any closing remarks.
I've got several people, as I said, the policy has already been discussed. We had large support from DOD, et cetera, strictly for the financial part here on it. So I appreciate your time, and thank you all for the consideration of the bill.
Thank you. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 158. And we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 515. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Monroe Moreno, Vice Chair Bacchus, members of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. For the record, I am Craig Satuki. I serve as the Interim Deputy Superintendent of Educator Effectiveness and Family Engagement for the Nevada Department of Education. I am here today to present Assembly Bill 515, which creates the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching Grant Program. The language in this bill is required to implement the program, and it was requested by the Joint Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance during the Joint Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance budget closings for the Department of Education. The Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching program is currently funding utilizing ESSER funds and provides tuition assistance to college students in the last 3 semesters of their teacher preparation program and stipends for students who are completing their student teaching experience. As many of you may know, students in teacher preparation programs must complete a student teaching experience, which is essentially an unpaid internship for 12 to 16 weeks, and prevents students from maintaining any existing full-time employment. This can be a significant barrier to our students that may postpone their student teaching experience until it's financially feasible for them to take time off from work. We all know that there is a teacher shortage in the state, and offering these incentives is a way to address part of this crisis. I will quickly provide an overview of the bill for you. Section 2 provides a definition of an approved traditional pathway licensure program. Section 3 establishes the program and provides the eligibility requirements for post-secondary institutions to apply for the grant. It also provides requirements to the State Board of Education to establish the number of awards, review of applications, and prioritize the award of grants. Section 4 provides the eligibility requirements for a student to receive an award from the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching grant program. This includes enrollment in the student's final 3 semesters of an approved traditional pathway and the student's final clinical experience known as student teaching. It also includes the student agreements to complete the program and maintain employment as a teacher at a public school in Nevada for 5 years. Thank you for your time this morning, and we are prepared to respond to any questions that you may have.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentations, members. As you remember, during our budget closings, we appropriated $6.8 million in each year of the biennium for this program, but it needed legislation to actually go with that money. So thank you so much. Any questions for the presenters? For the presenter, Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward this language. I'm very excited about it. My question has to do with the more of the process of how the students will know about this and the student who are going through the student teaching process, because let me tell you, I had to work night audit to go through my student teaching process. So how will the students know about this? Will this be done by the universities, or will this be done by the Department of Ed?
Thank you for the question. Craig Satuki, Interim Deputy Superintendent for the Department of Education. For the record, through you, Chair, to Assemblywoman Anderson. So primarily this will be done through the post-secondary institutions because those students are already enrolled within those institutions, and so it'll primarily work through there. But the department is always willing to engage our post-secondary institutions on finding ways to help support our educators across the board, whether they're existing students or even potentially when we're looking at our career and technical education students that are going into those post-secondary programs, letting them know that it's available and so that they can also plan ahead. As most educators know, when you're looking at student teaching, you don't plan the semester before, you're planning years in advance for that experience. So,
Thank you. Speaker Yeager. Let's go to Assemblywoman Peters first, then we'll go back to Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think we discussed this probably in that joint meeting, but I do not remember it, and it's not in my notes in front of me. Can you tell us how many teachers you expect to be able to support with this program, and like how quickly are we able to get this off the ground, like in October?
thank you for the question. Craig Satuki, Interim Deputy Superintendent for the Department of Education, through you, Chair, to Assemblywoman Peters.
You can go directly to the member.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the good news is that we already are implementing this utilizing ESSER funds, so we're already working for that. When we're looking at for essentially the 2023-24 school year for post-secondary students, we're continuing to utilize our ESSER funds to cover that first part of the semester because we do have till September 30th, and so we believe we'll be able to kind of roll that portion straight in. So I think we already have a process in place to kind of move forward. So I think we're hoping it'll be a nice, smooth transition.
I hope so too. And I can't imagine having people have to fall off this program in October when those fundings are done. So I appreciate the response.
Thank you. Speaker Yeager?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment because there has been a lot of discussion over the last couple days about the governor's proposed budget and how the legislature acted on that budget. This is a program, if I'm not mistaken, was proposed in the governor's recommended budget that this legislature, most of the folks on this committee voted in favor of funding this program at the tune of $6.8 million, I believe, in each year of the biennium. And then this, of course, is the budget bill because it has to be implemented. We can't just provide the money with the budget. So I just guess I wanted to say I've heard a lot of conversation about other governor recommended programs that are in other bills in front of this committee, namely Assembly Bill 400, which are still under consideration, but this was something that was actually put in the budget as recommended by the governor. I believe most of us in this legislative body agreed that this was a great program and it should be funded, and so I'm delighted to see this bill because I think this is going to help with our teacher pipeline. And of course we have other bills that are going to help with that as well, but I just wanted to thank everyone involved in this for getting this program up and running, and thanks to my colleagues who chose to vote in favor of funding it so that we can get it launched. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the presenter? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll say also that it is a very good policy and that because of that, it's a good policy. The money is there, it's been recommended, and I can see separations from other bills that we've had. So I look at each bill individually and would be in support of this bill and will be voting for it if you decide to move it today or when we do decide to move it. I just wanted to make that comment. I thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation. And I'll invite anyone to the table here or in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 515. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sheila Bray with the University of Nevada, Reno. Thank you for bringing forth this allocation of funding for our students, and thank you to the Department of Education for creating the language to go along with it. We are facing a teacher shortage, and we have been for quite some time. This funding will help those students in those last semesters to get across the finish line and to become those successful teachers that we so desperately need in our state. So we support. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przensky, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and we want to thank everyone for the support that's been shown to K-12, and we are very much in support of this piece of legislation. As all of you know, we have a teacher shortage, and this will help mitigate some of those issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no one else here in Carson City to testify in support of Assembly Bill 515, and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anyone join us on the phone line?
Chair, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. So we will move to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 515? Not seeing any, and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone lines that would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 515?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to the neutral position. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 515? Not seeing any, and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas, and knowing that we do not have anyone on the phone line, I'll ask the presenter if you have any closing comments.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Craig Satuki, Interim Deputy Superintendent for the Nevada Department of Education. I just want to thank you for your consideration and time this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning and presenting this bill. So with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 515. And knowing that the rules were waived yesterday, where we could work session bills on the same day that we hear the bill, if the bill doesn't have a fiscal impact, I can actually move it. So, members, I would entertain a motion to do for this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would proudly move to do pass Assembly Bill 515.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm powered by donuts this morning, so perhaps I have a little bit more to say than usual. Again, I just wanted to say how much I think this program is needed in the state and that it's been worked on. I do appreciate what I believe is going to be unanimous support out of this committee today and hopefully on the floor. But I especially want to thank my 28 colleagues on the Assembly floor who voted to fund the program, which is important because the policy is good, and I think we all agree on that, but policy without funding to be able to execute it really rings hollow in my mind. So again, wanted to thank the members of the legislature in both houses that actually voted to fund this program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I will give that floor statement to Assemblywoman Bacchus. Moving on in our agenda, the next bill on our agenda is Assembly Bill 516, which revises provisions relating to the Nevada Indian Commission, and our staff will be joining us. And before staff gets started, members, as you remember, during our subcommittee and joint committee hearings, I made the request after having many discussions with many of the members here and some of the governor's staff, that this was a necessary change to be made. I appreciate staff coming to make the presentation for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Yuri Yakovlev, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. As a disclaimer, I'm here as nonpartisan LCB staff, so I do not support or oppose any piece of legislation. However, I have been asked to walk through the provisions of AB 516, which is a budget implementation bill approved by the Joint Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance, as reiterated by the Madam Chair, to establish a standalone Nevada Indian Commission agency. As background, on May 8th, 2023, the Joint Committees approved establishing the standalone agency with an effective date of July 1st, 2024. To ensure the agency has sufficient time to plan for the organizational impacts of operating as a standalone agency. In order to assist in the transition and expand services provided to Indian tribes, the Joint Committees approved general fund appropriations of $509,466 over the 2023-25 biennium for 3 additional positions. The Joint Committees further approved general fund appropriations of $85,705 in fiscal year 2025 to replace room tax revenue transfers as a funding source for the Nevada Indian Commission budget. With that being said, AB 516 creates the Department of Native American Affairs. Sections 1 through 3 of the bill remove the Nevada Indian Commission and the chair of the commission from the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Sections 4, 5, 9, and 33 make conforming changes to transfer the administration of the account for the protection, rehabilitation of the Stewart Indian School from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to the Executive Director of the new department. The language in sections 7 through 9 are new to NRS 233A. Section 7 declares the new department is not intended to infringe upon the sovereignty of Indian tribes. Section 8 formally creates the Department of Native American Affairs, consisting of the Executive Director, the Nevada Indian Commission, and the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center and Museum. Section 10 provides definitions for the department and the Executive Director. Section 11 provides that the Nevada Indian Commission and its members are within the new department. Sections 12 through 14 make conforming changes to existing language related to the Executive Director. Section 15 provides new language to NRS 233A related to the duties of the Commission. Sections 16 through 22 and Section 28 make conforming changes to existing language to replace references of the Commission to the Department, renames the Nevada Indian Commission Gift Fund to the Department of Native American Affairs Gift Fund, along with replacing corresponding references. Section 23 provides that the Museum Director of the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center and Museum is under the direction of the Executive Director. Sections 24 through 27 and Section 29 revises existing language to indicate that the Executive Director or their designee shall serve on various boards. Section 30 provides language regarding the establishment of the new department and its impact on administrative regulations, contracts, and agreements, and actions taken by an officer or agency that was transferred as a result of this bill. Section 31 indicates the Legislative Council shall make conforming changes to refer to the appropriate officer, agency, or other entity in reprints and supplements to NRS and NAC. Section 32 provides that the provisions of NRS 218D regarding the submission of reports to the Legislative Commission do not apply to this bill. And finally, this bill becomes effective on July 1st, 2024, as indicated in Section 34. That concludes my remarks, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you so much for the walkthrough of the bill. Again, members, this was a bill that was at the request of our committee, and it did not have, this was the bill presentation and the fiscal matter presentation all in one. You do have an amendment to the bill on your desk that you received this morning, adding an amendment to Section 5. It is a friendly amendment for this bill. Do you have any questions for the presenter? I believe Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was grateful for the opportunity in the subcommittee to be able to ask staff to start this process after discussion with several members of our body as well as the departments. I've been working on tribal relations issues in this building for as long as I've been here, and I really feel like this is a huge step forward to modernizing and prioritizing our relationship between the state government and the sovereign tribal governments of the state of Nevada. I'm really grateful for the leadership of the office that have been willing to move this forward. And I think it's really an amazing move in our state. And I look forward to seeing how we're able to build on these efforts. I did want to ask, though, about a couple of other bills and their relationship to this office and how they will relate. We have a requirement for our state agencies to consult with tribal governments or have a coordinator to do that. And this legislative session, I believe my colleague has a bill to mandate that be a single person in each department. And I just wonder if how this would engage with that bill, if we would if this office would be the host for those efforts in our other departments to coordinate and collaborate with tribal governments? No. Well, I will take that offline. Okay.
Thank you so much. Members, in reference to the amendment, just noticed one thing we need to correct. The amendment, on the amendment, it says Section 5 of the bill. It's actually Section 9.6 of the bill where this amendment will go. So just to note that for your records. Any other questions for the presenter? Assemblywoman Bacchus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment. I'm very excited to support AB 516. I think this is a long time coming. Our Indian Commission has done so much for our 28 tribes and 60,000 urban individuals that identify as Indian. And I'm just really excited because Nevada is such a great state that recognizes its government relationship with our tribes. And so to hold a Department of Native American Affairs within the Office of the Governor just really makes me happy today. So I'm excited. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, our Chair of our Subcommittee on Government. It's been a joy watching this work through the process.
Thank you. This makes me happy. This is one of the goals I wanted to get accomplished this legislative session that we haven't been able to do in the past, and we finally found a pathway to get it done. So thank you so much for presenting the bill and the work that, I know I asked you to do a little extra work, but I appreciate you doing that. So with that, do we have anyone in the room that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 516?
Good morning, Chair.
Good
members
morning.
of the committee. My name is Jennifer Lanahan, and I'm here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony and the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe. We too are very, very excited about this bill. We're very appreciative for the committee for bringing it forward, and we look forward to its passage. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Stanchek with Service State Government Relations, representing the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, Shoshone Paiute Tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe, also here in support. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Willett, Willett, and I'm the grassroots manager at All Voting is Local Action Nevada, and we are in strong support of AB 516. Under Stacey Montu's leadership, the Nevada Indian Commission has consistently gone above and beyond in their public service. The possibility of a new Department of Native American Affairs is a much more appropriate and needed designation, which, among other things, will support tribal sovereignty through increased independence. Excitingly, AB 516 will also add 3 more staff, which will allow the department to serve Nevada's tribal nations and urban Indians in an even greater capacity. In summary, AB 516 is a needed investment to support tribal nations in Nevada. Thank you so much for bringing this forward, and we urge your further support.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. Is this on? Yeah. My name is Teresa Melendez, and I'm an Indigenous organizer here in the state of Nevada. Really excited and grateful that the committee has invested in this bill and spent so much time and energy on it. Really grateful. Just a couple of things to add, that it's exciting to see Nevada like following the trend with the rest of the country, and as far as like racial social justice for Indigenous people really moving along. And one of the things that is common in other states, a lot of other states have Indian commissions or Indian affairs departments at a state level. So it's nice to see that Nevada, we're moving along and following that trend. Knowing that I've worked with Executive Director Montu for a number of years, and we're really grateful to have her and lucky to have her in that position. But like a lot of our Indigenous programs, her office is understaffed and underfunded, so really she needs the support to be able to support 28 federally recognized tribes. That's a lot. And so for her to do, and her team to do their job effectively, they need support from you all. And so really grateful to you for recognizing that. Nevada has one of the largest Native populations in the country. And so in order for the office to do their work, we have to give them the tools to do their work, just like we have to support our teachers and our other department, our other needs in the state. That being said, even just like changing the name of the department from Indian Commission to Native American Affairs, just updating our language to more appropriate terms is important. But then also knowing that in working with state government offices, that there are a lot of agencies and staff in the state who need a consistent, reliable resource to work with, and that the Indian Commission is all we have right now. And so that puts a lot of work on these couple people, and recognizing that in order for us to co-govern the state better with the sovereign nations, we need more staffing, like the bill that Sarah Peters mentioned, Assemblywoman Sarah Peters, the tribal liaison bill. If that bill doesn't get funded, all we have is the Indian Commission. And so it's really important that they're able to do their job effectively. Miigwech, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Randy Lonigo. I'm the tribal chairman for the Summit Lake Paiute Tribe, and we are in support of AB 516 and to continue the work in collaboration with us being one of the 28 tribes to work with the Nevada Indian Commission. And as Sarah Peters mentioned earlier, the other bill that is coming forward, hopefully that is also something that you guys will support, and the tribes will support that as well, to have that, government to government tribal consultation with the state of Nevada and the federal recognized tribes for our state. Thank you. Vijayu.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 516? See none, not seeing anyone at our table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 516?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 516, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Coming back here to Carson City, is there anyone that would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 516? Seeing none and not seeing anyone at our table in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anyone at all on our phone lines at this time?
We have one caller, Chair. To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 516, please press star 9 now to take your place in the. There are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to the neutral position. Is there anyone here that would like to provide neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 516? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the miscitation on the number. My name is James Settlemeyer, Director of Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. What occurs within the Clear Creek property, which has been slated by the legislative body for sale and the money going to help rehab Stewart Indian School. In that respect, we've had interested people on occasion looking at the idea of maybe doing micro transit to Tahoe there, parking cars and things of that nature. However, we're kind of feel we're prohibited because we don't have the ability to lease that property. And as other things come up, we'd like to have the opportunity to lease that property to provide some form of income, a steady stream to that. Also, we've been trying to work for over a long period of time with Carson City in order to try to obtain upzoning, to change the zoning on said parcels so that the sale price would be more reflective and to be able to provide more revenue to the Stewart Indian Colony for upkeep. Anyways, I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, do you have any questions for Director Settlemeyer? See none, thank you so much. See no one else here in Carson City to provide testimony in the neutral position. Not seeing anyone at our table in Las Vegas. BPS, the one person we have on the phone line, are they there to provide testimony in the neutral on Assembly Bill 516?
To provide testimony in neutral to Assembly Bill 516, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. So with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 516. And knowing that our rules have been waived, I will open the work session for Assembly Bill 516, and I will entertain a motion to amend due pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very honored to move to do pass Assembly Bill 516. Amend and do pass. Thank you, Ms. Coffin.
Thank you so much. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Peters. All right, moving on to the next bill on our agenda is Assembly Bill 517. We'll open that hearing. Assembly 517 revises provisions governing the Legislative Council Bureau, and we'll invite Speaker Yeager to the table, along with Mr. Crossman. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Steve Yeager. I represent Assembly District 9. And as you can see at the table, I have some backup in the form of our really amazing LCB audit staff. I am really proud to present this bill to you. It did not come out of a policy committee, so this is its first hearing. And as you can see, it just came out on May 18th, so it hasn't been around long, and that's because we've been working on this concept for quite some time. So I believe it was yesterday I presented in this committee, although it could have been the day before. I had presented Assembly Bill 399, which was the one that created the subcommittee of the Interim Finance Committee to be able to bring the school districts in front of us to answer questions. And, you know, we consider that to be the transparency bill. I consider AB 517 in front of you to be the accountability education bill. And the reason this is important, of course, is we've talked as a legislative body that we are putting historic amounts of money into our state education budget. Still not enough per the Commission on School Funding, even to get us to the national average. But it's a substantial increase over what we've done in the past. I believe almost 30% more to the K-12 education budget. So with that comes accountability. We need to make sure we're getting results from that funding. And, you know, I know in talking to constituents in my district, I know we all knock on doors and talk to people before the campaign. You just get a lot of questions about the public school system and questions about why it's not better, why outcomes haven't improved. Probably the number one thing I hear at the door from my constituents. And so we're fortunate as a state to be in a position where we finally have the revenue to make a substantial increase. But with that, we need results. We need accountability. And so what 517 seeks to do is to create a process within the Legislative Council Bureau Audit Division to help us with this accountability. And as many of you have served on this committee, or if you've served on the Legislative Commission, you know how good our audit division is. I mean, they really go in, and you get the one nice page report, the nice one-page report that has the summaries, right? And there's always a thing at the bottom about recommendations, and almost always the agency accepts the recommendations. But behind that, obviously, is a full-blown audit with lots of documentation. They are just, they're amazing at what they do. And frankly, because we are a part-time, every other year legislature, they are the ones that make sure that the programs are working. And not just that they're working, but that they are improving. So I wanted to take a moment to thank them, because I think sometimes we lose sight of how much work they do in the auditing function, and how much better it makes state government for the people of Nevada. So Assembly Bill 517 asked the Audit Division to do performance audits of school districts. And obviously this is a big undertaking to do a performance audit. And so there's a phased approach in this bill. And I think what you notice is the two biggest school districts in the state, which are currently the Clark County School District and the Washoe County School District, as well as the Charter School Authority, would be audited on a 4-year cycle. And we have to give some time to do that. So in Section 5 of the bill on page 3, you will notice that the auditor shall not later than August 31st of 2026. So That's essentially the date where that first round of audits would happen for the two largest districts and the Public Charter School Authority. And Madam Chair, with your indulgence, I should note, I proposed an amendment that I hope is on there. I'm getting rid of sections 1 through 3 of the bill, so by amendment. So you can pretend that those sections don't exist. In further discussions, I didn't know that that was the wisest way forward on the issue of the research division. So pretend that doesn't exist, and the bill starts with section 5 if this committee is willing to process that amendment. But so you'll see, and this really is, it is a performance audit. It is capturing exactly what we've been talking about as a legislative body. How are you going to use the funds to actually get results and improvement in the classroom? How are you going to use the funds to actually make sure we have a qualified educator in every classroom? There are some other things there, right? We want to make sure that the schools are abiding by the reporting requirements that we have set up, making sure when they're contracting with the outside world, they're following the rules. Those things are, frankly, probably a little easier to do. But we're asking for more than that. We're asking for a performance audit. And then the second piece of the bill, and I'm probably going to miss the section, but there can be audits of other smaller school districts as well. That's a may. So essentially the chair of the interim finance committee, and I think where you see that is on page 5 of the bill, section 6, which starts at line 6. The chair of the interim finance committee can then request an audit for up to 3 additional smaller school districts. And so that way we assure that there's some accountability with the smaller school districts, but we would have some discretion there because frankly, with the size of those districts, we probably don't need to audit them quite as much. And then this would work exactly like the other audit reports work from our auditors. They would come up with reports, recommendations, corrective action. They would review those with the school districts. They would either agree to implement recommendations or not, and those reports would come back to us as a legislature and would allow us to be able to follow up on those audits. And so here's where I think the real beauty of this bill comes in. The function of the legislature historically has been to fund education, fund it by giving large amounts of money that are then funneled through some kind of formula. Now it's the pupil-centered funding formula. Goes to the schools. And then, of course, we have a policy role to play. We enact policy on the state level for schools. But normally after that, we don't have much of a role. A lot of reporting goes to the Department of Education. We're able to look at that reporting. But we as a legislative branch don't really get involved in some of those, I don't want to say day-to-day because that's not it, but in actually looking at how the school districts are functioning. And I think the 2 bills that were presented, the one yesterday, Assembly Bill 399, allows us to, as a legislature, as legislators, look into the districts and ask questions. A lot of questions that our constituents want to know answers to. And then this bill, Assembly Bill 517, allows the LCB more broadly, through the audit division, to look into the operations of the district. And this is not a scenario of we want to come in and tell you everything you're doing wrong. That's not what this bill is about. This bill is about making sure through performance audits we can make recommendations for how you can do things better. And I think the real import of this is if we find a school district doing something that's incredibly effective, we as a legislature and we as an audit division are going to be able to take that and recommend it to other school districts so that there's some sort of, I don't really like this word, but some sort of synergy here, right? Where one can learn from another. So that, in essence, is what the bill does. I think it puts the legislature into the process of transparency and accountability in public education. I believe that's really where we ought to have been in the past, but we just haven't by nature of the way the systems are set up. And so that is the bill. And Madam Chair, I have Mr. Crossman with me here, and I would certainly invite him to add anything I miss, because there's a lot of detail in the bill, and thankful for his help in getting the drafting correct. And beyond that, would be happy to answer any questions. And would just note that there is one fiscal note on here from the Clark County School District, and just sort of indicates they're not really sure, but they believe it would take significant effort and staff time to do this. There is no fiscal impact from the Legislative Council Bureau's perspective at this time.
Thank you so much for Mr. Crossman, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Dan Crossman, the Audit Division. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this hearing today. I will just make the obligatory statement that we are part of the Legislative Council Bureau, and as staff, we are nonpartisan and independent. And as a result, I do not advocate for or against any legislation now. However, obviously this bill has an impact on our office and is asking us to do a series of in-depth performance audits. And we're always happy to take that direction and to hopefully provide the answers that this body is looking for. So I don't have any other additional information. I thought the speaker did a nice job.
Thank you both so much. Members, this is the policy hearing for this bill because this is a committee requested bill. There has been, as Speaker Yeager had said, a lot of conversation before we got to this legislative session and for years that there was no accountability matrix put in place. And during this legislative session, we have set up some changes of how we not only fund our education system, our K-12 education system, but also looking at, where that funding's going. It started with those two very long dates with our superintendents, but very important, a lot of good information, and making sure we continue that moving forward. And to do that, and making a request of our Legislative Council Bureau's Audit Division positions were added, and a number of us voted in favor of those positions to give them the tools that they need to actually carry out the work that we're asking them to do. So this is the policy hearing. Whatever questions that you have, please let me know, and you can address the presenters. Assemblyman Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm very proud to be on this committee introducing this bill with the Speaker and everyone. Because I do think this is going to be an excellent tool that we'll be able to utilize going forward. But I had a question on the timeframes that the audits will include. I know we're starting, the first audit will be received in 2026, and then not less than every 4 years. Would say the first audit include a 2-year period, and then let's say that we don't do another one for 4 years? Would it include all 4 years so we can kind of start to see trends? I just want to make sure. I'm hoping the answer is yes, because I do want to be able to hopefully see trends of us moving in the right direction with all the great things that we are doing this session.
For the record, Dan Crossman, LCB Audit, Assemblyman Hafen. Yes, our intent would be to be able to provide some historical trends in that information. And in section, section 5, 3, sub 3, it does provide latitude for us to define the scope of some of that work. And so where there is an opportunity to show continuity of effort and to show trends in the results, that would definitely be something we would strive to do. The bill does not specifically identify the scope, the number of years in which we might go back and obtain that information, and I do appreciate that we have some latitude there so that if there is a need to go back further to obtain historical information, we can include that in our audit.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward the language. It'd be really easy for me to get into the weeds on this one, but I will not. I do have just 2 questions. The first has to do with, actually both of them have to do with the items that are listed on page 4 section 2D, that all of those items. I'm curious as to whether or not it would go all the way down into like, when you're looking at the efficiency of any strategy, 2D, the efficiency of any strategy or program, it's not going to go all the way down to like, does this textbook work? Will it? It'll be a little bit more higher level is what I'm thinking, but maybe not. How do you envision using that?
For the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor to Assemblywoman Anderson. That's a great question, and I kind of anticipated there would be some questions about the level of detail and the depth in which we go. I would not anticipate getting to that level of a specific textbook, but as part of our process in a performance audit is to look at, to dig, right, and to dig a little bit more and to understand how deep do we need to go. So I would not anticipate getting to a textbook level, but well, no, we're not going to go there. But we would go to the level we feel that we need to provide an answer, to be able to answer that objective, if that helps.
May I ask another question, Chair? Thank you. My second question has to do with, I really appreciate the increase the parental involvement and family and community engagement in public schools. Greatly appreciate that language because we know that when parents are involved, students are much more active. How exactly would that be looked at? Or no, that's way too in the weeds. That's not always a school district's decision, or that's many times up to a parent to do that. Would that instead be the advertising and outreach that would be audited, or is there another mechanism that you are considering?
For the record, Dan Crossman, LCB Audit to Assemblywoman Anderson. Again, great question. My short answer is I don't know at this point. We're just beginning to dig into these things and recognize that some of these aren't, we may have to, as we do in a normal performance audit, sometimes there's great criteria that tells us this is exactly what should be happening. In some areas like this, it is a little more vague, and so we might look at best practices across the country. We might look at studies that have been done by entities that specialize in some of this information. So specifically to what we would test there, I can't at this time tell you where we would go, but we would try to find the appropriate level again.
Completely respect that answer and understand where it's coming from. My last question, if I may, has to do with the personnel in our education world. Many times we talk about how many teachers are leaving, how many counselors, how many speech language pathologists, but we don't always talk about the other individuals that are necessary for a school district to run. Will there be also a discussion about how much of a percentage of a budget is being utilized for individuals away from the classroom, in particular, let's say the administrative buildings, or and/or the separation of those same employees? That might be something that is decided upon by the, reading through this, by the auditor on their own, or is that something that should be directed by the IFC?
For the record, Dan Crossman, LCB Audit. I think that is very valuable information, and that's I think that falls within some of these sections, that type of information we would gather, and I've noted it as well.
Thank you.
Chair, could I just mention on that front, if I may, Steve Yeager for the record. I think that's how you see these two bills really working in tandem, right? And to Mr. Crossman's point, we were very careful to provide some broad categories, but to allow them to do the work that they do, right? You don't know sometimes what you're going to get until you start digging in, and we want them to have the latitude to be able to do that. But in terms of your question, I think that's a role that IFC would play, because when we talk to the school districts and we learn valuable information, as we did in those hours or days-long hearings that thankfully our chair was gracious enough to preside over, we start to learn about trends in districts, right? And I think those are things where under that provision that Mr. Crossman referenced on page 4, line 31 through 32, there's basically any other matter which the legislative auditor is requested by the interim finance committee. So my vision of that is the chair of the interim finance committee would be able to say, we're asking questions and we're learning things that maybe don't concern us, but we're learning things we would like to know more about in terms of how it's actually operating at that district level. And my hope is that we will have as much of a partnership as we've ever had in this building between actual legislators and the work that the audit division is doing when it comes to school districts, because they have their own audit plans and they audit agencies, and obviously sometimes we provide input, but a lot of that just sort of happens because it's the way things go. But this is a brand new process, and I think it's one that offers an exciting partnership between the IFC and the audit division. Obviously that's contingent on both of these bills passing and the governor signing them, but I think your question is an excellent one, and it allows that kind of flexibility.
Assemblyman O'Neill?
Thank you, Chair. I think most of my questions Assemblywoman Anderson has asked, but sort of just for clarification, you look at Clark County. They're the 5th largest, I think, in the country school district. Look at Carson City or Humboldt County School District, much, much, much smaller. So my question is, so when you look at these individual counties, would you actually, it wouldn't be fair to me to look at Clark in total versus Carson City. When you look at Carson, 1 high school, 2 junior highs, 4, 5 elementary schools. Clark's much different. So would you actually pick in Clark certain schools to look at, or are you just going to stay with the district as always looking in the district in totality and not drilling down to it? And that's where I was looking at on that page 4 with all the material you're looking at, which I think is great. I think it's something we should all get behind. I think we've actually been asking for this in the legislature for years in some degree or fashion. So I'm very excited about this. Our governor has already asked for some of their reports. So if you could just try to explain, how would you look at the different school districts, if you can, at this early stage?
Assemblyman O'Neill, Dan Crossman for the record. That's a great question, and obviously each of the districts are unique. There are some similarities. There's some things that are comparable. There are also some things that are very different. And as far as an audit approach, it would really depend on which of these objectives we were looking at, whether or not it was a district-wide administrative type issue, or if it was something that would require us to dig into the school level. Now, obviously with Clark County, with the decentralized structure, we would definitely need to go to some of the schools on some of these objectives to understand, for example, some of the programs they've implemented. Now, there are a lot of schools in Clark County, as we all know, so that would require us to do some work to understand the nature of the different schools and maybe some different categories and ways to select representative samples of those different schools to understand what they're doing at the school level, for example. But each of those those are all items we would vet as we go through the audit process and plan how to answer these objectives.
It'll grow and mature as you delve into it, is I think what I hear. Is that right?
For the record, Dan Crossman, grow, hopefully it matures. The idea is that we can focus our resources where we can do the most good. And I appreciate that flexibility within the bill for us to be able to work within these parameters that are laid out in this bill to define some of the work we're actually doing and the scope of that work. And then hopefully we meet that mark, the desires of this committee and the committee in 399 if approved. And then if there's things that we haven't addressed fully, that opportunity will be given to us to go back out and do that and maybe focus on some things that maybe we didn't address. Obviously, this is a type of project that could get extremely large. We have to work within our own existing resources as well as the other audits that we're performing. So we have to balance that. So yes, it'll grow for sure.
If I may say, Chair, having been subject, when I was working for the state as a division chief, having been subject to the audits, they are extremely beneficial, and I truly am excited about this. I truly am. I know our staff will do an excellent job, and it's a Herculean task to start off with because there is such diversity and we're asking for so much. So thank you for the time and thank you for the answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Hadi.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I can't sing the praises enough of Mr. Crossman and his division. I got to chair the audit subcommittee of the Legislative Commission and work with him on various audits, and I've seen the work that they do, and it's amazing work. So I know that your division I won't say easily, but your division can handle this task and produce great work. And I just have one quick question, because I know that the auditor shall not later than August 31st, 2026 issue the first reports. And I know that they can possibly be to us before that date, but we are sending a historic amount of money to education this biennium. And we will be back here in 2025 before that 2026 deadline. And I'd like to just know how possible it would be to at least get some of the reports while we are here in 2025, because before we then fund education again, we can maybe look at what has been done with the historic amount of money that we're sending during these next 2 years. And so I'm just curious about why not have those reports for us by the next biennium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve Yeager for the record, and I'll certainly hand it off to Mr. Crossman. I think what he's going to say is it's just going to take some time, right? But to your larger question, and this is an important one, and again, contrary to what might be out there in the media and in popular belief, myself, the Senate Majority Leader, have been in discussion with the Governor's Office and the Nevada Department of Education on exactly that question. How do we measure, right? This is a historic investment, but not only how do we measure, but in what time frame are we going to measure? Because we know that things don't turn around overnight. It's going to take some time to see the impact of these resources. And so what I wanted to say is, in addition to this bill and the bill you had in front of you yesterday, in addition to that, there is a wider conversation happening among the legislature and the governor's office and the Department of Education about, are there interim metrics that we can start to look at? And I don't really mean new metrics, I mean existing metrics, because we're not asking teachers to do more testing. I think we all agree we have plenty of that. But are there tests that we have now that will give us a better picture when we come back here, some of us come back here in the next legislative session, to look at the difference that the money is making? And I think all of us share the goal that we want to see progress. But I think we also have to be realistic that progress takes a little bit of time and is going to take further investment in education. So without having that fully baked yet, I can't quite say what it is, but I think you're going to see additional concepts come to this legislature before the end of the next 9 or 10 days, looking at the interim, so we have something as a legislature to evaluate the next time we come back. And of course, if this committee and the legislature is kind enough to pass Assembly Bill 399, the IFC will have a couple of opportunities before the next session to bring the school districts back in front of them to ask these kind of questions. So I think you're going to see something there, but certainly would hand it off to Mr. Crossman about whether it's realistic or not to have the audit division provide something prior to the dates listed in the bill.
Thank you. For the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor. It's a great question and something we contemplated quite a bit. It will be our intent to release reports as they are ready to be released prior to that date. Now, there's a lot of objectives in here, and I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I don't know how many reports we would have on maybe each district based on similar objectives and how we're able to package those. Specific to, as Speaker Yeager mentioned, for the additional funding, one of the struggles we run into is that in order for a school district to take that money to implement changes, and for those changes to have time to implement an effect, it will take time. And 1 year, and the timing of our fiscal years and the school district's calendar years that they operate under, we need a little bit of time in order for the districts to be able to identify whatever it might be, new programs, new initiatives, put them in place, let them mature, let them provide the effect that they're intended to. And if we jump in too quickly after just 1 year, I'm not sure we're going to see or be able to measure a lot of change after a very short period of time. In some instances, it's possible. But part of the desire to push this out a little bit was to give the districts the opportunity to put initiatives in place and let them mature, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Chair. And would these audits be subject to the same timeframes that the other audits, like they have to have their correction action plan in so many days, and then they get re-reviewed in 6 months? And would they also come before the audit committee?
For the record, Dan Crossman, LCB Audit. Yes, They are subject to the same provisions of our normal audits.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I appreciate this effort so much on the campaign trail and even just talking with parents in my constituent districts. What are we doing about education is the highest, like probably most asked question that I get from people. And I think it myself as a parent of 3 children in the school district, what can we do here to help them be better able to meet the needs of our families and kids as they change very dramatically, as well as our teachers. So I appreciate that we're tying this kind of together and making sure that we're all working together to ensure we're getting that funding there when it's needed, that we're appropriately addressing programs that need to be put into place for our kiddos, and then assisting in the implementation of it, so that we are using like the full brain power of our state to make sure our kiddos are taken care of and that our school districts are working. So I really truly appreciate the effort that has gone into this package of bills, and I look forward to seeing how it rolls out in the next couple years.
Thank you. Not seeing any other questions for the presenter, I will ask you two to take a seat back, and I will invite anyone to the table that would like to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 517.
Good morning, Chair, members of the Committee of Ways and Means. It's good to be with you here. My name is Daniel Stewart, for the record, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Clark County Education Association. We are in strong support of this bill. In combination with the transparency bill that you heard yesterday from the Speaker, 399, I believe that this complete program will give the legislature a snapshot into education in a way that it maybe has never had. We saw, I know it was a long day for all of you that were here when the districts came, long days, and spoke to you, but I can tell you that the information that was learned from those meetings was incredibly helpful as we moved on in the session. Sunshine is incredibly important on these dollars, and this will finally allow us really to connect the dots between the money we spend and student outcomes, which every single person in this building I know has been focused on. I don't know why we haven't done this before, but it's a huge and important step forward. And I don't know how we can come back. I know you deal with tough issues every session, where to spend money, where not to spend money. How can those of us in the education system come back to you every session and ask for additional money if we don't have any evidence to back up what's working and what's not? How can we go back to the parents? I'm a parent too of 3 kids in the Clark County education system. And so again, CCA strongly supports this bill. We think this is going to be an important piece for years, if not decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to provide testimony in support? Seeing none, not seeing anyone in our Las Vegas room. VPS, do we have anyone join us on the phone line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 517?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 517, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, good morning. Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. We are in support of Assembly Bill 517. Transparency and accountability are always important in this field. We definitely share the speaker's comments that this isn't just looking for things wrong or improper. We want to see what's working in certain districts and then implement those practices elsewhere. Throughout session, NSBA has defined accountability as policies and strategies that keep our schools filled with qualified educators who have the tools they need to ensure that every student has access to a high-quality education. Assembly Bill 517 falls directly in line with that shared vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 517, please press *9 now. There are no other callers choosing to provide testimony in support at this time.
Thank you so much. So coming back to Carson City, is there anyone that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 517? Seeing none and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 517?
To provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 517, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Casey Rogers for the record. I just want to say I oppose this bill. That is all. Thanks.
Can we get your name?
Casey Rogers for the record.
Thank you.
There are no other callers choosing to provide testimony in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll come back to Carson City. Is there anyone that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 517? Seeing none and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 517?
To provide testimony in neutral of Assembly Bill 517, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll ask the presenters if they have any closing comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve Yeager for the record. Just wanted to thank the committee for hearing this. And, just wanted to note there's often through the legislative process, we hear a lot about conflict. And I truly believe, and I know that accountability in public education and transparency in public education is truly a shared objective among the legislature, among the governor's office, the executive branch, and really every single Nevadan in the state who has a stake in the outcome of our K through 12 education system. So I believe this particular piece of legislation can and does work in tandem with other accountability and transparency metrics that are being proposed by the governor's office as well. And so just asking that as a legislature, we have a chance to take our rightful place at the table to ensure transparency and accountability in our K through 12 education system. And with that, would urge passage of Assembly Bill 517, and certainly happy to keep working with anyone else on the committee as this works its way through the session. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for the bill and the presentation. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 517. And seeing that we only had $0 fiscal notes from the school districts that submitted fiscal notes, and knowing that there's no fiscal impact to the Legislative Council Bureau, so there, because those positions that they were needed was included in our budget bill that passed the floor just a few days ago. So, members, we will open the work session for Assembly Bill 517, and I will accept a motion to amend due pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 517.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Heineke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Brown-May. With that, we'll move on to the next bill on our agenda, and that is Assembly Bill 518, which revises provisions relating to the indigent defense. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Colby Nichols. I'm a program analyst with LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. It is my turn in the bouncy chair this morning. To provide a summary and brief run through of AB 518, this is a committee BDR. As the committee members may recall, in closing the Department of Indigent Defense budgets on April 22nd, a motion was made that provided some general fund appropriations to the Department of Indigent Defense Services. That's for the reimbursement of counties for indigent defense costs in excess of calculated maximum contribution amount. Included in that motion was a request for the drafting of a committee BDR that would clarify that maximum calculation as well as the permissible expenditures. In addition, LCB Fiscal was directed to work with the agency and the Governor's Finance Office to determine an appropriate amount to set aside in the IFC contingency account. That would be to address any funding concerns that have been identified by the Davis Court Monitor, include that appropriation in this bill. And so accordingly, AB 15 establishes that formula for determining the maximum amount that a county may be required to pay for the provision of indigent defense services. The bill additionally prohibits a county from seeking reimbursement from the state for costs of capital improvement projects relating to the provision of indigent defense services. In addition, the bill establishes requirements for counties to submit annual financial status reports to the Department of Indigent Defense Services unless the department requires such reports quarterly. And then Section 7 of the bill makes appropriations. Those are approximately $6.3 million in fiscal year 2024 and $6.6 million in fiscal year 2025. That's to the Interim Finance Committee for allocation to the Department of Indigent Defense Services. For various purposes, that would be one, to fund the reimbursement of counties for costs in excess of their maximum contribution amounts for the provision of indigent defense services. Two, costs of the department related to compliance with the Davis v. State consent judgment. Three, costs to the Office of the State Public Defender for contracts for legal services for complex cases. And then finally, four, costs for training and pay parity for attorneys who provide indigent defense services. If it's okay, I'd like to just provide a brief rundown section by section of what this bill does. Section 2 of the bill establishes that maximum contribution formula as well as what is and isn't permissible. Section 3 contains those financial reporting requirements. Those are for the counties to submit to the Department of Indigent Defense Services. Sections 4, 5, and 6 of the bill make conforming changes to update existing references that currently refer to regulation to instead refer to the provisions of this act. And then Section 7, as I mentioned, does contain those general fund appropriations to the IFC. And then Section 8 establishes that this bill would be effective as of July 1st, 2023. Finally, I would just briefly note, in reviewing the language of the bill in Section 2, some revision might be necessary to correctly align the bill with the intent of the committee, namely, what we would need to see in Section 2 is the establishment of a base amount for each county, as well as some changes to the language to correctly account for the compounding of an inflationary adjustment. That concludes my remarks, Madam Chair. As has been indicated by my other LCB colleagues, I'm here as your nonpartisan staff. Do not oppose or support any legislation. Just happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I know that there's also a few amendments that have been submitted. So before we go to the amendments, I'll ask members, do you have any questions for the presenters before we go to those who came up, the amendments? Do you have a question? Assemblyman Hafen.
Yes, thank you. And I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this. So and I'm looking at Section 7 regarding the fiscal aspect of the additional appropriation. So in Senate Bill 504, we authorized $1.95 million roughly per year. And now we're asking for an additional 6.3 and 6.6 in the fiscal year. Can you just give me some historical context of how much per year we have been spending on the indigent defense service? Thank you.
Just to clarify that I'm understanding the question, you're asking for more information about how the amounts included in Section 7 were determined, and maybe some information about historical reimbursement amounts as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Again, this is Colby Nichols, LCB Fiscal, for the record. In terms of the amounts that are included in Section 7, those were developed through a series of conference calls involving the agency, LCB Fiscal, as well as the Governor's Finance Office. There are several primary components that are included there. As far as the estimates, some of this is included for costs to reimburse counties should the costs of reimbursement exceed the $3.5 million that was included in closing the budgets on April 22nd. In addition, several other factors were identified through a review of the court monitor's reports. The court monitor is a third party. Part of what's in the Davis Agreement is that the court monitor reviews the state's progress in compliance with the Davis Agreement. The monitor releases reports, I believe, on a quarterly basis, and in addition, there was a special report dedicated to budgetary matters. So in reviewing those, there were several issues, in particular in the 8th Court Monitor Report, which was published following the budget closing for the Department of Indigent Defense Services. So some of the funding that's included in Section 7 of this bill would be additional resources to conduct oversight of the counties, additional year-round training opportunities for rural defenders, additional funding for the State Public Defender's Office for complex litigation. That's typically capital cases, but not exclusively. I would say one of the primary components of the amounts that are included in Section 7 is compliance with a study to establish workload standards. This is a stipulation of the Davis Agreement that requires a state to comply with workload standards. Those are established by a third-party study. What was communicated during the budget closing is that study is currently in the process of peer review. It did not sound like the Department of Indigent Defense was aware of exactly when that study would be published, but one of the stipulations that's in Davis is the state has 12 months to get into compliance with those workload standards once the study is finalized. And as the executive budget did not contain any funding for that compliance, that's part of what's being included in the estimate here. That particular portion is responsible for about $4.7 million in fiscal year 24, and then just shy of $5 million in fiscal year 25. And then the final component that was identified is pay parity. This is another stipulation of the Davis, which I think is easier to understand in spirit, but the actual mechanics of it gets pretty muddy. The idea being that the two attorneys, prosecutor and defender, in a given case are making approximately the same amount of money. Where that can get a little tricky to provide an estimate for is that can cut across the people involved in that. They could be state prosecutors, they could be county employees, they could be contract attorneys, they could be contracted public defenders. So pay parity, what's included in this bill, the estimate that was arrived on is approximately $800,000 in each year. But again, that was an element of this that was very difficult to identify a specific amount that would be sufficient. Going back to the second part of your question, which is the historical amounts that have been required for reimbursement, what I do have handy is the projected amounts for fiscal year 2023, as well as the actual ones from fiscal year 22. Those were included in the closing packet. So for fiscal year 2022, the total reimbursement amounts totaled approximately $1.9 million. That's across both Davis and non-Davis counties. In the current biennium, the 21 to 23 biennium, these costs are the costs for reimbursement to the state, those are handled through allocations from the restricted IFC contingency account specifically for Davis counties, and then for non-Davis counties, those reimbursement requests are funded through allocations from the unrestricted IFC contingency account. Again, the total for fiscal year 22, specific to reimbursement to the counties for costs in excess of their calculated maximum contribution, that's $1.9 million. And then for fiscal year 23, we have projections based on information provided by the counties. So the projected total reimbursement is $3.7 million. And again, what's included for fiscal year 24 and 25 per the motion made by the full joint committees is 3.5 million. So going back to the amount that's in Section 7 of this bill, part of what's included in that estimate would be to account for the difference between the 3.7 million projected for fiscal year 23 and the 3.5 million already appropriated to the budget as part of the closing. So that would be approximately 400,000, 200,000 in each year to account for that difference. Hopefully that provides a little bit more information about how we got to the numbers we got to, as well as what's been reimbursed so far.
You're welcome. Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this may be a result of not serving on judiciary, but could you walk us through the scenario that's kind of written out here in Section 2, Sub 1A1, which is related to counties' populations less than 100,000, that they would subtract any expenses related to capital offenses and murder cases. And then in Section 2, Sub 2, the county's population less than 100,000 chooses to transfer state public defender, then they would, for death penalty cases, et cetera. Can you just talk a little bit about how, what is that subtraction of the capital offenses and murder cases, and then this subsection 2 description tied together? Can we?
I'm happy to take a stab at it. I might ask the department to maybe come and bail me out or correct me if I misstate anything. Really what you're seeing in Section 2, the genesis of a lot of this language is existing language. However, that language is in regulations that were adopted by the Board of Indigent Defense Services. And I believe part of the intent of the committee in requesting the drafting of this is to lift that out of regulation, clarify, correct a few things, and then establish it in statute. As you said, there is essentially portions of this that are directed towards counties of a certain size or smaller versus those that are above a certain population. Again, so as it exists in regulation, and we're keeping that as the language moves into the bill, the language related to, how do I say this? If a county chooses to transfer the responsibilities for indigent defense services to the state public defender's office, there is a cost-sharing split. So what you're seeing here, I want to stress, this isn't necessarily new. It's taking an existing arrangement and codifying it in statute as opposed to regulation. So that language that you're seeing there, about the counties being responsible for paying 25%, and that is that cost split should a county choose to transfer the responsibility for indigent defense services to the state public defender's office. As for the sections related to, I think it's counties' population in excess of 100,000, those counties tend to handle things like complex cases, litigation on their own, and so they would not be included in that. And I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
That did. Thank you so much. So it sounds like the cost recovery piece in subsection A or 1 and is just wholly different than the cost sharing that's in subsection 2. So that helps me clarify. Thank you so much.
All right, happy to help.
Thank you so much. Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just a little bit more of a comment. First of all, Mr. Nichols, I really appreciate you walking through the different elements that are included in that funding in response to my colleague's question. And just wanted to kind of make sure that we put on the record here that, really fundamentally the most important thing is that we protect every Nevadan's Sixth Amendment rights. And that's really what this is all about. Additionally, with the Davis settlement, we also have, essentially a court decree that we need to remain in compliance with or face consequences associated with that as well. So there's that additional legal compliance aspect that that we need to address. And I know during the budget hearings there were a lot of questions that came up around making sure that we had the adequate resources, and some concerns that the governor's recommended budget didn't have some of the resources in place to make sure that we could comply with these various aspects. And so I think both the some of these policy changes, addressing the many conversations that we've had about contributions to two counties is beneficial, as well as, in particular, this allocation of funds in IFC to help ensure that we can meet, again, the needs to provide people with their constitutional rights, but also maintain compliance with the monitor and with the that settlement agreement. So I just wanted to put that on the record and appreciate staff and the agency working together to ensure that we have the resources necessary moving forward in this biennium to meet those objectives. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for Mr. Nichols? Not seeing any. We had two amendments that were presented for this legislation that it's not the work of Mr. Nichols, so I will not ask you to to comment on that, but I would invite Ms. Marcy Reba up. And the second came from Ms. Mary Walker. If you could both join us at the table. And if we could go through. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Marcy Reba, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Department of Indigent Defense Services. Before I begin, I wanted to apologize for the tardiness of this amendment and say that I'm grateful and thankful to your staff for getting us on this calendar today. I do have some typos on page 1. My intent of the amendment, I would ask that you cross out the last sentence about Clark County. That's actually not what is contained in here. And when I go through what our amendment is, what we're looking for is to amend Section 2 so that it is in compliance with the regulations that were adopted by the Board on Indigent Defense Services. So just a little reminder that the Board on Indigent Defense Services is created to provide resources to our public defenders and create minimum standards for public defense to make sure that we are complying with those standards. This legislature, knowing that compliance with those standards was going to increase costs for our rural counties, gave the authority for the Board on Indigent Defense Services to create a maximum contribution formula, and we have created that formula. It is in the Administrative Code, NAC 180, Section 16. So what we are requesting in this amendment is to bring this NRS into compliance with what we already have in the Administrative Code. And the purpose is many of our rural counties have actually taken steps to address the issues that they're having in indigent defense services, and that has taken on an additional amount of funding that they are relying when they took those steps on the initial maximum contribution formula. So in the first part, we clarified that the maximum contribution formula almost is kind of like two shares. You have the county share, like a high deductible healthcare plan that once you hit the max for that county share, you can request reimbursement for the state share, which is anything over and above that amount. And what we looked at in determining this baseline and setting that forth is in counties with a population of less than 100,000, it's the actual cost for providing indigent defense services for fiscal year 21 through 22, minus any state reimbursements as set forth in the graph below. So we're asking that this graph be the base year for next year. In the next part, what we are trying to encapsulate is compound interest. So every year we take the base, and then the next year we add interest, or 5%, the lesser of, and then every year remaining after that we take that prior year's amount and then add interest, or 5%. So we are attempting to get compound interest at that point. I do have a change to what our next request is. We would ask that on line 12, in a county whose population is 100,000 or more, remain, but that the remainder of line 12 through line 26, where the comma is, be struck, and that it read, in a county whose population is 100,000 or more, may seek reimbursement as set forth below. So this provides a maximum contribution for Clark and Washoe. Historically, Clark and Washoe have not requested reimbursement, But if there is some sort of change, this would allow them that ability to ask for reimbursement if it's what they spent in the prior fiscal year, plus inflation, or that 5%, whichever is lesser. And then it's also been requested that we add language that in subsection 4, nothing in this section limits a county from expending more than its share of indigent defense services. And I can answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
So on page 3, you want to strike from line 12 after 100,000 or more, everything down to which line?
Line 26 up to the comma to start with may seek.
And currently, Clark County and Washoe County do not come to the state to ask for reimbursement of their fees. They take care of that in their counties alone, correct?
Chair, that is correct. We do require an annual report where they have to let us know if they're intending to request reimbursement for those. And historically, Clark and Washoe have not requested reimbursement.
And how would this amendment or the removal of the language in your amendment, how would that affect the current practice we have?
Thank you, Chair. Clark and Washoe are included in our maximum contribution formula. So the current formula actually reads the average of what was spent in fiscal year 18 and 19 plus inflation. So what this does is it kind of is a floating, and this is language from LCB, that we just look to the prior year and then add 5% or that interest. So the state share would actually appear to be lesser than it would under the initial regulation that's set forth by the Board on Indigent Defense Services. And this amendment was requested by Clark and Washoe.
Thank you. Members, questions? Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I understand why Clark and Washoe would want to do that, but I guess I'm trying to understand from a policy standpoint, given that those two counties have their own agencies that are funded through their counties, and I know those budget negotiations happen all the time about proper staffing, proper resources, and I guess my concern on that is the volume of work in Clark and Washoe. I don't want to say it's unpredictable. It's high all the time, but I think can be unpredictable in terms of the type of cases, particularly in Clark County is the county that by far has the most percentage of death penalty cases, almost all of them in the county, which can be extraordinarily expensive. So I guess I'm just trying to understand if there's any way to reasonably project, like if they were to come and ask for reimbursement, what kind of numbers we're talking about on the state level, because I believe their budgets are, at least in Clark, the budget is fairly significant that the county funds. And so I'll say I have some concerns about adding that provision here in terms of the state's responsibility, but if you can give any indication of what you think the magnitude of those requests would be.
Thank you, Assemblyman Yeager. Marcy Reba for the record. So in order for us to make the determination of what the state's share would be and to build our budgets, we ask counties to submit to us an annual report of what their expected budget is going to be to the next year. One issue that we've had with Clark and Washoe is we've asked, public defenders do a lot of jobs. They do things that don't necessarily fall within the definition of indigent defense services. And indigent defense services has been defined by this legislature, and it's basically limited to an adult that's charged with a criminal offense or a child that's alleged to be a delinquent or in need of supervision. That means that at points when public defenders are being appointed on civil cases, we are not allowing our rural counties to include that in what they're referring to us for indigent defense expenses because it doesn't fall within the definition. So we would likely need to work with Clark and Washoe for them to eliminate any sort of civil work that's being done when they're asking for the reimbursement so that we could limit it. But looking at historically, Washoe County in this past, when we did our budget build, we did not request any funding on behalf of Washoe County because their budget didn't exceed the maximum as was set by the regulation. And for Clark County, I believe we had looked at requesting about $4 million in each fiscal year to be able to provide that difference. But as this is a floating maximum contribution, there's more work. There's more work to be done to really get an estimate of how much the cost would be. We require our rural counties to keep time and track how much is being spent on indigent defense services rather than civil, and only report those items to us. So we haven't done that at the urban level. So at this point, we don't really have the ability to know. And just noting that when the legislature told the board to create a maximum contribution formula, there was no language saying that it was only for the rural counties. It was for all counties. So that would be a policy decision.
Madam Chair, could I ask a follow-up on that? And I'm sorry, this might be a very basic question, but in the scenario where counties come and ask for reimbursement because they've exceeded their maximum contribution, how does that work functionally? Does the money go from your agency to the local government, or does it go directly to the office? So I'm trying to process that in terms of a county budgeting process where Clark and Washoe County Commission and the budgeting. Where would that money go functionally if it was approved?
Thank you, Marcy Reba, for the record. So historically, what we've asked each county to do is provide their annual report. And in the annual report, which is due May 1st, they have to provide their budget, plus their expected, let us know their expected amounts and whether or not they're going to be requesting reimbursement. Clark and Washoe historically have not requested reimbursement, but if a county chooses to request reimbursement, then every quarter they need to provide to our department their fiscal status reports, which contain an outlay of how much they've spent and also have that county budgeting. As many of you know that are on IFC, the next step once a county meets that maximum contribution formula is the department does a work program to request reimbursement from interim finance because we didn't historically have the funding in our budget. Moving forward, we will have the funding in our budget, it looks. We have about $3.5 million for each fiscal year, so this process would be a lot faster. Once a county requests reimbursement, we do pay the county as they request to be paid, so the money goes directly back to the county at this point. But moving forward, how this will work, it's kind of a work in progress. If the funds are actually in our account, we do serve as council administrator for a lot of the rural counties because there is independence from the judiciary at this point. So as we're receiving billing from appointed council, if a county has exceeded their maximum, the department could directly pay those bills, but those would have to be discussions with the Board on Indigent Defense Services of whether we want to change. But at this point, once a county hits their maximum on that quarterly report, we request reimbursement and it goes directly back to the county.
And Madam Chair, just a comment. This is something that I think I need to think a little bit more about because Clark and Washoe are different. And they're different in the sense that there are agencies that employ attorneys, investigators, social workers that are salaried and don't make overtime, right? It's part of being a public defender there. You get whatever cases you get and you handle them, and obviously you get your pay increases as you would normally do through the county. Aside from that, there are other actual hard expenses when you've got to hire experts, when you've got to, pay court filings and that. But I guess I'm concerned about setting up a scenario where the state is reimbursing potentially the county, but like the people doing the work are not seeing that. It's one thing to say if a county's contracting for an attorney at a certain amount of hours, like that's a quantifiable cost. This person worked this many hours, they're due this much compensation. But I'm having some trouble wrapping my mind around how that would work with Clark and Washoe, given that they under the statute, I think are required to have public defender offices of their own, apart and separate from the state public defender. So I need to get some questions answered, Madam Chair, before I'd be comfortable proposing that part of the amendment.
Thank you so much for that. Members, any other questions and or comments? Okay, thank you. I do have concerns with that, and maybe we can look at maybe make an amendment to your amendment as we move this bill forward. So seeing no other questions from members on the committee for your amendment, I know that Ms. Walker had submitted an additional amendment for this bill. If you would just discuss your amendment for the committee.
Good morning, Chair Monroe Moreno and members of the committee.
Could you move your mic down just a little? We can't hear you.
For the record, Mary Walker, does that work? Representing Douglas, Lyon, and Story counties. I'd first like to thank Speaker Yeager and Majority Leader Hardegee for allowing us to submit an amendment to AB 518 to address an important issue for the rurals. For the past several weeks, under the leadership of Senator Scheibel and Senator Harris, several people, including judges, district attorneys, public defenders, NACO, the AOC, we've all been working on addressing some of the unintended consequences of the implementation of AB 424 from the 2021 legislative session. AB 424 required a pre-trial release hearing within 48 hours of arrest. This caused our courts, judges, public defenders, and district attorneys to work 6 to 7 days a week and on holidays. The 48-hour pretrial release hearing was difficult for the rural counties to implement, but people who bore the brunt of the workload are the judges, public defenders, and district attorneys who had to work weekends and holidays without pay. I have one judge who has only been able to take 4 days off this year because there is no one to cover for her. All the other judges are grappling with the 48-hour rule also, and they don't have an extra day to try and help another judge out. Many rural judges are also doing the work of their staff over the weekends and holidays in order for their staff to have weekends and holidays with their families. The human toll on these folks is enormous, and to add to that, in my research, I found that 74% of rural justices of the peace are up for election in 2024. My greatest fear is they are not going to want to keep working without time off or pay, and particularly for a 6-year term. I'm extremely concerned if our good current judges decide to not file for office, we will see a severe degradation of the quality of person who would file for the office. The implementation of AB 424, 48-hour rule, in all honesty, has been on the backs of these people, the judges, district attorneys, and public defenders. We need to make it we need to make it better and more sustainable for them to continue their yeoman's work in fulfilling the requirements of AB 424. What we are requesting is an annual ongoing appropriation of $1,474,200 to cover weekend overtime, standby pay, or to pay for relief judges, district attorneys, and public defenders. And we do have a companion bill. It was SB 235 out of the Judiciary Committee, Senate Judiciary Committee, chaired by Senator Scheibel, Vice Chair Harris. And in that companion bill, it's basically the policy, because we realized, and I know all of you know, that in the rurals we don't have enough professionals, whether it's doctors or lawyers. And so what we did with 325 was to try to expand and to grow those professionals by allowing a district attorney from one county to go over and work for another county, a municipal judge to work for a justice of the peace, that type of thing. But the problem is without ability to pay for this relief professionals, it's really not gonna work. We're gonna have to pay these people to come in and relieve these folks. The $1,474,200 was based on the number of judges, district attorneys, and public defenders who work in each rural county and the number of times they hold court or are on call over the weekend. So, for example, Elko has 4 courts, but they are larger and they pool their judges over the weekend. So you only have one judge working a month. And because, but they do hold court because of their workload as well as because of having to meet the 48-hour rule. They do have to work Saturdays and Sundays. But you will only be paying, if this goes through, for one court over the weekends, not all 4 courts in Elko County. So the judges have done a pretty good job in trying to be as efficient as possible in implementing this 48-hour rule. Most of the other courts hold hearings on one day during the weekend, so they would only get that stipend for that one weekend day. The pay to the judges, district attorneys, and public defenders is calculated as a stipend of $450 per day for each professional. That is basically $150 per hour for 3 hours, which everyone felt was reasonable. The appropriation requested does not include any other staff work which the counties pay for. So I tried to craft a very narrow request for appropriation. Otherwise, if you were going to look at the total cost to the rural counties, it would be in the several millions of dollars. What we're also stating is that the amount of funding provided should only be used to pay a $450 per day flat rate stipend to each judge, district attorney, and public defender, and it could be for standby pay or to hire a relief professional or for their working of the overtimes. And it's specifically to enact the requirements of the 48-hour pretrial release program in counties whose population is less than 100,000. So what would happen here is because it's a flat fee, that we know how many judges, we know when they work, so you can calculate it out, and it's a certain dollar amount per county. And that would be provided to them. And then if they have not used that funding, any remaining funding shall be reimbursed back to the state controller. The funding should not be used for any further staffing costs attributable to the courts, district attorneys, public defender, sheriff, or any other staffing costs. The expenditures of these monies shall be subject to each entity's annual audit, and a report of the annual expenditure of the pre-trial hearing supplemental compensation shall be provided to the Legislative Council Bureau by each entity receiving the funding on or before October 1st for the previous fiscal year. I do have on Nellis a chart which looks at what the calculation is by county, how many days they work on weekends, how many courts, with the total dollar amount. And with that, Madam Chairman, any questions you may have?
Thank you so much for explaining your amendment for this bill. And here's we have a question from Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As promised, I'm probably going to be talking too much today, but Ms. Walker, I appreciate the presentation. I think you covered this, but I think my mind was just elsewhere when you said it. So in terms of how the appropriation would work, the appropriation would actually go to the Indigent Defense Commission, and is it going to be what kind of how are your folks going to get reimbursed? What do they have to show to be able to get paid the $450 stipend per day?
Thank you very much for the question, Assemblyman Yeager. Basically, we wanted to, because it's a set dollar amount and we know when they're going to be working and how many people and all of that, we wanted to stay away from a lot of administrative problems. So the concept is the controller would basically provide that set dollar amount to each county. And by in July, before August 1st of each year, the county would then use that to reimburse, and it's only for the weekend work. We did not include holiday in this dollar amount. And so they would go ahead and spend that. If there was any monies left over, they would bring them back. It would be subject to audit, their annual audit, and you would get a report back each year.
And just a quick comment, if I could, Madam Chair. Just want to thank you for working on this. I know this issue of how quickly you get to see a judge once you've been arrested. It's something we've worked on for a very long time. And frankly, there were certain jurisdictions where people were being arrested and they weren't being seen by a judge for a week or two, which I think we all believed probably violated the Constitution. And as a matter, because of that, we put the 48-hour rule into statute. Certainly understand that that's had a disproportionate impact on the rural communities. Just like the last issue we talked about, it's a question of volume. Clark and Washoe have a lot of judges who can swap for each other and can fill in, and we've certainly realized we've asked rural judges to do a lot of extra work. We think that work is important constitutionally to make sure that if someone is eligible to be released, they can be released as soon as 48 hours. So I wanted to thank you for narrowly tailoring the request to an amount that I think works and hopefully solves some of these issues and lets our rural judges know that we appreciate this work that they're doing. Asking folks to come in on Saturdays and Sundays can be tough, but we think it's important, and I think this is a very narrowly tailored request. And so, Madam Chair, I'm supportive of this amendment. Not really a question, but just a thank you to Ms. Walker and to the others who have been working on this ever since AB 424 went into effect and we started to hear of issues in the rural communities. So thanks for taking the lead on this and bringing this to us.
Members, any other questions for either one of the presenters on their amendments? Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Walker, for your amendment, and for the other amendment. I believe you heard the concerns from members on the committee. If we can work on another amendment addressing those concerns, that would be great. That way we can work session, get the bill to a point that we can work session it. And with that, with no other questions, we will go to testimony and support. If there's anyone that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 518, I ask that you come up now.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. John Puro for the record from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. I'm in support of AB 518 with both amendments. I just do want to address Speaker Yeager's concern. We crafted this amendment because the original language in the bill kind of set it as a max contribution formula, which we felt would cap Clark's expenses, which, as you know, Speaker, Clark is different. With the number of death penalty cases, we're top 5 in the nation in filing death penalty down in Clark. And we have the tourist population that the rest of the state does not. We will have F1, we will have the Super Bowl, and what that brings, as Metro goes, so do we. So that will bring increased costs to our office, and we did not want to be caught in a max contribution formula where a county manager could say, this is all we have to spend on indigent defense, but also not excluding us from reimbursement if it was necessary. So if we could narrowly tailor that more to the committee's liking, we'd be more than happy to do that. Ms. Reba is in an interesting position as she is trying to thread a big needle here. As was said, we're at risk of failing the Davis judgment if we don't come up with more funding for indigent defense. Assemblyman O'Neill, Carson City, failing. Nye County, close to failure. There's problems, and justice should mean the same for every Nevada citizen all across the state. The Sixth Amendment doesn't change based on where you live. We fought for parity in Clark and Washoe for wages. In Carson City, they don't have parity. In Nye County, their caseloads are out of control. So as we're bigger agencies, we can fight with the counties on a larger level for what it costs to provide effective assistance of counsel. And the appointment of counsel means nothing if it's not effective assistance of counsel. So Ms. Reba's threading the needle, and Ms. Walker is working to make sure that the rest of the state is taking care of the people that are making sure we meet our burden of seeing that all Nevadans get a prompt hearing when they are arrested and still innocent. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have, before you leave, I think we have a question for you, Mr. Pirro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't miss the opportunity to ask Mr. Pirro a question. I miss my days in judiciary. So I guess it's the same question that I had, because I get what you're saying, right? If big events come into town, just by the definition, the nature of big numbers, that means more cases for everybody. But there's a finite number of folks working at the public defender's office, and as you know, on a good day you're there 8 hours, on a bad day you're there 18 hours. Actually, it's much like being a legislator, to be honest, except you get paid and we don't. So that's the difference. But I guess the question is, like, so if I mean, how does the county go about determining, because it's a flat cost in terms of like personnel, right? There's costs on the side that are attendant, but like salary costs are salary costs, and you don't make overtime. So I guess my concern about it is if it's a way for the county to ask for more money and get more money, but it doesn't actually help you as a public defender because your caseload is the same, and or is the answer they're going to be able to immediately turn around and hire 3 or 4 new public defenders at a cost that was unanticipated? And so that's kind of where my question was. I just want to make sure that if we go this route, it's actually going to help the people who are doing the work in a tangible way, and it's not just going to be money to the county and you're just sitting there with like 25 more cases. The death penalty cases are a whole nother topic we can save for another day, but if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
John Pirro for the record. That is the hope, Speaker Yeager, that it would trickle down and that we would be able to, as you know, my boss, Mr. Imlay, he's the one that negotiates for bodies to handle the cases. And for us, like, here's a perfect example. There's now a strip corridor court that the Justice Court thought on its own would be a good idea. But those caseloads now, of all the cases just coming out of the strip, have increased exponentially for the lawyers handling those cases. So we're going to have to ask for more bodies for that. And that's what my supervisor would do. And then as a union, we're the ones that negotiate for the pay. So we're in a better bargaining position than most rural counties. And I think this bill tries to strike that balance, but not completely cut Clark out if we needed to come to the state and say, hey, we need some reimbursement for this unanticipated event.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Vincent Guthrow. My last name is spelled Guthreau. I serve as the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties. We represent all collective county interests for all 17 of our members. We're up here in support with the amendments. I want to thank the Executive Director of the Department of Indigent Defense Services, Marcy, for her work on the amendment that she presented today, along with Mary Walker and her effective work on meeting the needs of the 48-hour rule. My comments will be specific to Section 2 of the amendment that was submitted by the department. This, I think, because as the bill was written, I think we were having an unfunded mandate issue there, and I think with this amendment, that helps satisfy both the terms of the agreement on the lawsuit, where the state is responsible for a portion of indigent defense services across the state so that equal justice can be administered, but again, honoring the county partnership in that service. So we appreciate the opportunity to testify, and because of that, we're in agreement with that, with the bill and the amendment as presented. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Judges of Limited Jurisdiction. I really want to speak to what I'll just call the Walker Amendment that was presented to you. The 48-hour rule has been discussed, debated. We have tried to find a solution to this particular, I don't even want to call it a concern or an issue. It's a reality. The rural judges have done a very good job of trying to implement the 48-hour rule. This amendment provides some level of relief to those counties. It's greatly appreciated. I think it goes to what Mr. Pirro said, equal justice across county lines, and we can meet that 48-hour standard with this particular amendment. I also want to thank Senator Scheibel, Speaker Yeager, and all of the stakeholders that participated in these conversations. I believe one of them here is to the right of me as well. This is a great solution, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Monroe Moreno. My name is John Jones. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, also in support of the Walker Amendment. I do want to say that I take no position on the text of the bill as currently written. I'm just speaking towards the Walker Amendment. This financial outlay, coupled with some changes that are currently pending in SB 235, I think will help provide more flexibility for specifically our rural jurisdictions in making the 48 hours happen. It does not give every entity everything it wanted, but it is a good compromise, and we are here in support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support? Not seeing any. Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us by the phone line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 518?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 518, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 355, please press, you are unmuted and may.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? This is Lori Matthews. I'm Justice of the Peace and the Municipal Court Judge of both the Fernley Municipal Court and the County of Lyon. I support the Walker Amendment to AB 5118 to include pretrial hearing supplemental compensation to the rural counties and the State Department of Indigent Defense. Lyon County has successfully established a program that ensures all defendants receive a bail hearing within 48 hours of arrest. Our county holds bail hearings 356 days of the year. The cost of implementing this program has cost Lyon County a significant amount of money in additional pretrial, jail staff, and software. No funding was provided to the counties to assist in implementing the system. The additional funding will assist rural counties who were struggling to recruit and retain qualified professionals prior to the addition of weekend and holiday work. The funding will provide financial relief to the rural counties in continuing to meet the 48-hour bail requirements and retain qualified professionals. Time.
Thank you for calling in. Next caller.
There are no other callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Then moving to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 518? Not seeing any and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone join us on the phone line that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 518?
To provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 518, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Then moving to the neutral position, if there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 518, I invite you to the table, and good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, representing Washoe County. We are neutral on the bill, but I just did also want to come up. I won't belabor or repeat what Mr. Pirro said, but to speak for Washoe County to the amendment. As we discussed with the department, it was our intent that the amendment would allow us to retain our existing ability to seek reimbursement. We weren't seeking anything new. I heard, Mr. Speaker, your concerns, and Madam Chair, we are absolutely willing to work on tailoring that if need be, understanding that our budget cycle and your budget cycle don't entirely align, not intended to give us a way to blow a hole in the budget. And so Washoe County is absolutely committed to working on getting us to where we need to be to allow us that ability if and when we needed it, but to not completely eliminate it in this bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Seeing no one else here in Carson City to provide testimony on Assembly Bill 518 in the neutral position, and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 518?
To provide testimony in neutral of Assembly Bill 518, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much for that. And I don't believe our fiscal staff has any closing comments on this piece of legislation. So with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 518, and I look forward to seeing the amendment to the amendment so that we can move this bill forward. Thank you all. And we will open the last bill on our agenda before we go to any work sessions we'll be doing today, and that is Assembly Bill 523, which revises provisions relating to education. Another one of these Ways Committee bills, and our wonderful staff is here to present. Good morning and thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Adam Dross with LCB Fiscal. Today I'll be providing an overview of Assembly Bill 523. And as a reminder, LCB staff serve as nonpartisan staff, and we neither advocate for nor oppose any legislation. Assembly Bill 523 is a budget implementation bill and revises certain provisions for the pupil-centered funding plan based on the action of the money committees. Specifically, this bill reflects changes related to revenue, cash flow, inflation calculation, and changes to the Education Stabilization Account, otherwise known as the K-12 Rainy Day Account. Going through the specifics of the bill, Section 1 revises NRS for various items that are included as sources of revenue in the State Education Fund, reflecting these as in the sections of statute, particularly NRS 387-1212. This includes new Department of Agriculture fine revenue, as well as existing revenue that is provided to the State Education Fund. Section 2 revises the calculation for the rate of inflation when the executive budget is prepared to reflect a 3-year average percentage increase or decrease in the Consumer Price Index, as opposed to the current use of the percentage change for the immediately preceding calendar year. Section 3 allows the State Education Fund to receive a general fund advance for cash flow purposes if the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and the Director of the Governor's Office of Finance determine it is needed. An advance from the State Education Stabilization Account will not provide adequate funding to address the shortfall. It also requires the Interim Finance Committee to approve such a request. If approved, such advances must be repaid by August 31st following the end of the fiscal year in which the temporary advance is made. Section 4 revises NRS 555-470 to allow the Department of Agriculture fine revenue related to the application of pesticides to be deposited in the State Education Fund rather than distributed to school districts. Section 5 revises NRS and reflects changes for the Education Stabilization Account. This includes increasing the funding cap for the Education Stabilization Account from 15% to 20%, allowing the Interim Finance Committee to utilize funding in the account for any decreases in non-general fund revenue in the State Education Fund, as opposed to the current language that limits access to that funding for only decreases of 3% or more. Finally, Section 5 includes allowing the State Education Fund to receive an advance from the Education Stabilization Account for cash flow purposes if the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and the Director of the Governor's Office of Finance determine it is needed, and the Interim Finance Committee approve such a request. If approved, these advances must be repaid by August 31st following the end of the fiscal year in which the temporary advance is made. Section 6 revises NRS and revises the calculation of the rate of inflation when the executive budget is prepared to reflect a 3-year average percentage increase or decrease in the Consumer Price Index. And finally, Section 7 provides the effective dates of the bill, largely July 1st, 2023, except for the changes related to the Education Stabilization Account, which are effective October 1, 2023. And Madam Chair, I'm available for any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for walking us through the bill, members. Those of you that were here during the last legislative session, you know that we established this stabilization account. Living through a pandemic knowing that we ran through our rainy day account because there were so many needs. We now have a rainy day account to address all the other needs in the state, but we have this education stabilization account to help us maintain or stabilize education if we see things that happen on a normal year, but especially things that may happen in emergency situations. So this is the bill hearing for Assembly Bill 223. Do you have any questions on the policy in this bill draft or the fiscal aspects of it? Assemblyman Yeager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think when I came into this session, I thought, well, the stabilization account, that's for situations where, the state, something like COVID, right? Where we empty out an account and we have this specifically for education, which of course makes sense. But I just wanted to make sure I understand the parameters of this bill. I think the idea here is there may be cash flow issues with the way that funding sources come in. So this bill allows school districts, or I guess maybe it's the Department of Education, I want to be precise on how I say it, but it essentially allows advances to be made out of this account to be able to get folks through the up and down cycles of cash flows. The money then comes back to the stabilization account, but under this bill that would be a permissible purpose of the funds that are in the education stabilization account.
Madam Chair, through you to the Speaker, that is correct. So with this bill, the education stabilization account could be used to provide cash advances as the Department of Education is making payments from the pupil-centered funding plan account, and some of the revenue is not received until months later. So this provides them that cash flow that they need to make those payments. And if the education stabilization account doesn't have the resources available, as a secondary source, the state general fund would also be available.
Thank you. And then just one follow-up question. Generally speaking, the funds in the education stabilization account earn interest. So I'm assuming that, like funds in any other interest-bearing account, when the funds are out of the account being used for some other purpose, they're obviously not gaining interest, right? They need to be back in the actual account to be accruing the interest.
Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair, through you to the Speaker.
You can go directly to the member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is correct. That once the cash advance is out, if the education stabilization account is providing cash for the cash advance, it's my understanding that would affect the interest earnings on the education stabilization account.
And then, Chair, if you'd allow me just to make a comment while we're on that topic, because, again, I think we had some discussion recently in this committee about other proposals about how to use this interest income. And I think there was a proposal in Assembly Bill 400 heard in front of this committee to use interest income from this account to fund two different programs. The Teach Nevada Scholarship Program, which we funded in other ways in the budget, and then also the Nevada Teacher Advancement Scholarship Program account, which I believe we passed that today. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to note for the record that, I think that was the problem, right? We can't be assured that this money is going to sit there the whole time because of cash flow issues. So I believe it was the committee's intent to say we like the programs in Assembly Bill 400, but funding them out of interest income is not a sustainable funding source because of this exact issue relating to cash flow. And so I just guess I wanted to put that out on the record that I think we chose as a committee and as a legislature to be fiscally responsible in terms of how we're funding programs, and also assure that our school districts have the money that they need to be able to actually operate in times of lower cash flow. So appreciate this bill coming forward, and appreciate particularly our fiscal staff who recognized because of the way revenues come in, we may have a problem, and we're able to address that problem through Assembly Bill 523, which we have in front of us today. So not a question, just a comment. Thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And I know we did pass hear a bill earlier. Just for clarification, was everything in line with the work that we've done with what the speaker has said?
Madam Chair, that is correct. Just to clarify, the education stabilization account, as closed by the money committees, did reflect the education stabilization account retaining its interest earnings, with the state treasurer projecting interest earnings of $25.6 million in FY24 and $27.2 million in FY25. That funding was retained by the education stabilization account as currently reflected in NRS. Under the scenario provided by AB 400, or as proposed under AB 400, 75% of the interest earnings would have gone to the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program account, and 25% would have gone to the Nevada Teacher Advancement Scholarship Program account, which I believe are like advanced degrees for teachers. The bill that was heard earlier today by the committee is related to teacher incentives, which is more related to stipends for teachers as they move through their student teaching process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions about the bill itself or any fiscal aspects associated with the bill? This is a bill implementation bill for work that we have done throughout this legislative process. All right, not seeing any. Thank you so much for the hours of work put into drafting this piece of legislation and presenting it to us today. We appreciate you. And I'll invite anyone to the table that'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 523.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And our superintendents, especially the ones who have been on this commission, think that there are some good moves in here, especially that access of the education stabilization account by the NDE when there's a cash flow issue. So we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City that'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 523. Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 523?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 523, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. So moving to opposition, is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 523? Seeing none, not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 523?
To provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 523, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, good morning again. Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. NSCA is opposed to AB 523 to increase the cap of education stabilization account from 15 to 20%. We also oppose the change in the calculation of the rate of inflation, as we believe it will shortchange Nevada students in times of high inflation. You've no doubt heard us talk throughout the session about the rainy day in Nevada and why it's time for 20, meaning a 20% raise, a starting pay of $20 an hour, an average class size of 20 students. Unfortunately, we just believe the 20% increase in the stabilization account is the wrong 20%. It just moves us in the wrong direction. You know, when we're combining the education stabilization account with the state's rainy day fund, reserves could approach nearly $3 billion next biennium, which is 7 times the state's previous high of $401 million. We just believe it's fiscally irresponsible to underfund education and overinflate reserves when we can't retain our educators or fill their positions when they leave. You've heard from a parade of Nevada's incredible educators throughout the session about the hardships of working in public education with low pay and increasing stressful working conditions. Instead of increasing reserves, we would encourage the legislature to use these additional monies to fund Time for 20. It's a rainy day in Nevada schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
There are no other callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to move to neutral testimony. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 523, I invite you to the table. Seeing none, and still not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. PPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines that would like to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 523?
To provide testimony in neutral of Assembly Bill 523, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much for that. And I don't believe our fiscal staff has any closing comments for Assembly Bill 523, so we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 523, and thank you again. And with that, knowing that the rules have been waived, I will open the work session for Assembly Bill 523 and will entertain a motion to do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would go ahead and move to do pass Assembly Bill 523.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously supportive of this measure. I guess I wanted to address some of what we heard in opposition today. I don't know what could be more important than making sure we have a healthy education stabilization account. For two reasons. Number one, we just heard about potential cash flow issues with school districts, and I don't know why we would leave ourselves in a situation where we might not be able to fund K through 12 education through the cash flows that are not anybody's fault, but just simply a result of how revenue comes into the state. And then in particular, appreciate that this bill increases the cap on the stabilization account from 15 to 20%. Obviously, we could use that money elsewhere, but if we get into a situation where we have a downturn, I can't think of anything more important than having money that is dedicated to making sure that K through 12 education remains whole. So I think we took a very measured approach to go from 15 to 20%, and of course future legislatures will be able to evaluate whether that's the right amount. But this is the first time, I believe, in the history of the state that we've actually had money in an education stabilization account. We've always had it in just our what's called the rainy day account, the rainy day fund, but this is just for education. And I think this is us telling educators and students across the state that we have your back in case something goes wrong in the state's economy. So very supportive of this measure and appreciate the hard work that staff put into putting this bill together. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Watts. Thank you. Members, that is the last bill on our agenda, but before moving to the work session on measures that previously were considered by this committee, we're going to take a 5-minute recess and then come right back. Okay, members, we'll come back to order. And we will open the work session on an Assembly Bill 469.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 469 was heard by the committee on May 15th. It appropriates $4.4 million from the general fund to restore the balance in the stale claims account created through NRS 353.097.
Thank you so much for that. Members, any discussions before I entertain a motion to do pass? Seeing none,
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblyman Watts. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries unanimously. I'll sign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Bacchus. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 470.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 470 was heard by the committee on May 15th. It appropriates $41,353 from the general fund to the State Public Works Division for professional services and filing fees related to water rights associated with the Marlette Lake water system. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions before I entertain a motion to do pass? Seeing none,
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 470.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadegui. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Hafen. Next on our work session agenda, Assembly Bill 471.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 471 was heard by the committee on May 15th. It appropriates $3,158 from the general fund to the State Public Works Division for replacement computer hardware and associated software. There were no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any discussion, questions, or comments on Assembly Bill 471? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 471.
Thank you. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadegui. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Dickman. And we will open the work session for Assembly Bill 472.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 472 was heard by the committee on May 15th. It appropriates $7.1 million from the general fund to purchase to the purchasing division for the purchase of a warehouse building in Las Vegas to replace leased space. There are no amendments recommended for this piece of legislation.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 472? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 472.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadegui. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama. Next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 473.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 473 was heard by the committee on May 15th. It appropriates approximately $12.8 million from the general fund to the Fleet Services Division for replacement and purchase vehicles. There are no recommended amendments for this piece of legislation.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 473? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 473.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman O'Neill. Moving on, the next item on our work session agenda for today is Assembly Bill 474.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee heard Assembly Bill 474 on May 15th. It appropriates $3,359 from the general fund and authorizes $8,621 for a total of $11,980 for the Commission on Ethics for the replacement of computer hardware and software. And the authorization would be funded through county reimbursement revenue. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 474? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 474.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Miller. And with that, we'll move to the next item on our work session agenda, Assembly Bill 475.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Assembly Bill 475 was heard by the committee on May 16th, and it makes the following general fund appropriations. Section 1 provides $100,000 for the provision of education, technical assistance, research, and policy development for the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Section 2 provides $400,000 for the purchase of audiovisual equipment, hybrid teaching equipment, and video capturing and editing technology for the National Judicial College. And Section 3 provides $87,000 for the cost of a 2-day meeting hosted by the National Council of Juvenile and Family Judges related to the development of national juvenile resource centers for concerning firearms. There were no recommended amendments for this particular bill.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 475? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 475.
Thank you. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Peters. Next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 476.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 476 was heard by the committee on May 16. Assembly Bill 477 makes a total general fund appropriation of $1.8 million and authorizes expenditures of non-general fund and highway fund revenues of $411,617 for the Division of Aging and Disability Services for various computer hardware equipment, maintenance costs, as well as replacement of door locks. And that's primarily it. And there are no additional amendments on the bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 476? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 476.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Anderson. Moving on, the next on our agenda is Assembly Bill 477.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 477 was heard on May 16th. It makes a general fund appropriation of $6.9 million and highway fund appropriations of $22.1 million, as well as authorizes expenditures of $823,272 in non-general fund and non-highway fund revenue for the Department of Transportation for continuing costs of replacement of the Nevada shared radio system. There were no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 477? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 477.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Brown May. Next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 478.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Assembly Bill 478 was heard by the committee on May 16th. It provides highway fund appropriations of $2,014 to the State Emergency Response Commission for replacement computer hardware and associated software. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 478? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 478.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Hafen. Next on our agenda is Assembly Bill 479.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 479 was heard by the committee on May 16th. It provides general fund appropriations of $112,464 for the following. It's general fund appropriations of $66,169 for the replacement of computer hardware and associated software, $45,556 for the replacement of switches, firewalls, and router equipment, and $739 for licenses to upgrade the Commission's computer operating system. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions, comments on Assembly Bill 479? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 479.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Dickman. Next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 481.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 481 was heard by the committee on May 15th, and it provides a total of $700,000 from the general fund account to the Nevada Main Street program. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 481? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 481.
Second.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Gorlow. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 485.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 485 was heard by the committee on May 22nd. As originally introduced, the bill provided $25.5 million in general fund appropriations to the legislative fund for capital improvement projects to facilitate the information technology services projects and capital improvement projects. However, there was an amendment that was provided by the Director of the Legislative Counsel Bureau, which revises this amount to $3,974,486. And that was primarily to support costs associated with information technology services, as well as the purchase of one passenger van and annual dues to national and regional organizations.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 485? See none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 485.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Watts. The next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 486.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 486 appropriates general funds to the Department of Administration's Division of State Library Archives and Public Records for the following. $21,142 to the Archives and Public Records budget for replacement computer hardware and software, $146,459 to the Archives and Public Records budget for the replacement and purchase of equipment technology and performance of a large-scale digitalization job, and $20,641,000 for the state library budget for the replacement of computer hardware and software. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 486? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 486.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Backus. Moving on to the next item on our work session agenda, it will be Assembly Bill 492.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 492 was heard by the committee on May 17th. It appropriates general funds to the Nevada System of Higher Education's Computing Center budget for $3 million for the renewal of dark fiber leases for Nevada Net, and $5 million for the replacement equipment for Nevada Net. This has no recommended budget amendments.
Thank you so much. Members, any discussion or questions on Assembly Bill 492? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 492.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman O'Neill. Moving on to the next item on our work session agenda, Assembly Bill 493.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 493 was heard in committee on May 17th. It originally appropriated general fund appropriations of $5 million to the Nevada System of Higher Education for an interim study for the funding formula of the system, and requires the Nevada System of Higher Education to submit a report related to this regarding what the results are for the study. There was an amendment that was proposed for this, and the amendment was to reduce this request to $2 million. And I believe that concludes what was recommended in the amendment.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 493? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 493.
Thank you so much. Second. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama. Next on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 495.
There we go, okay. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 495 was heard in committee on May 17th. It provides a number of highway fund appropriations from the Nevada Highway Patrol Division for various replacement fleet vehicles, ballistic rifle vests, helmets, replacement tasers, mobile data computers, replacement radar certification systems, recording devices and software, replacement equipment for vehicles, replacement computer hardware and software, the purchase of an oil filter crusher and steel shipping containers for a fabrication workspace, as well as oral fluid mobilizing testing devices and cartridges, and a staffing study. I would note that there were recommendations for amendment of two particular sections within the bill. There was a recommendation for $66,620 in Section 3 for the replacement vehicle. That was recommended to be adjusted to $77,120. And then there was also a recommendation for a staffing study, originally at $50,000 in Section 13, and that was amended, recommended to be amended to $74,889. And Madam Chair, I believe those were the only two changes that were being recommended for this particular bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions on Assembly Bill 495? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 495.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hodeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Next on our work session agenda, Assembly Bill 496.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 496 was heard by the committee on May 17th. It provides $2 million for the costs related to a joint emergency training institution. For the training division, it provides general fund appropriations of $29,401 and highway fund appropriations of $30,601 for the replacement computer hardware and software. It also provides $10,043 for our highway funds and $10,453 for the purchase of radio equipment, general fund appropriations of $8,468 and highway fund appropriations of $8,812 for the replacement of tasers. Also for the Nevada Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, it provides general fund appropriations of $5,550 for replacement computer hardware and software. And finally, for dignitary protection, it provides general fund appropriations of $9,190 for the replacement of computer hardware and software, general fund appropriations of $13,664 for the purchase of portable radios, and general fund appropriations of $12,960 for replacement tasers. And Madam Chair, I do not believe there is an amendment for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 496? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 496.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Huddicke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Peters. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 500.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 500 was heard by the committee on May 17th. It provides a supplemental general fund appropriation of $70,450 to the Governor's Finance Office for unanticipated shortfalls related to costs associated with preparation of the statewide cost allocation plan. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 500? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I would move to do pass Assembly Bill 500.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Huddicke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Miller. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 502.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 502 was heard by the committee on May 18th. The bill, as originally introduced, provided general fund appropriations of $589,999 for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health for an unanticipated revenue shortfall and an increase in the operating costs associated with Lakes Crossing Center budget. During the hearing, there is testimony that the amount for the supplemental appropriation should be reduced from the $589,999 to $471,798, and that is the only amendment on that bill.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 502? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 502.
We have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Huddicke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Anderson. Next item on our work session agenda will be Assembly Bill 504.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 504 was heard by the committee on May 18th. It makes appropriations and authorizations to the Office of Economic Development for the following: general fund appropriations of $12,906 for the GO-ED budget to replace for replacement computer hardware and software. General fund appropriations of $7,877 for furniture and communication services for a new office space. General fund appropriations of $12,480 for the costs to staff certifications. General fund appropriations of $2,259 and authorizations of $4,194 for the procurement outreach program budget for the replacement of computer hardware and software. General fund appropriations of $3,601 and authorizations of $6,688 in the procurement outreach program budget for the modification of office space. There are no amendments recommended for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 504? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 504.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hatteke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Brown May. Next item on our work session agenda will be Assembly Bill 505.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 505 was heard by the committee on May 17th. It provides general fund appropriations and authorizations to the Department of Veterans Services for the following. General fund appropriations of $48,295 and authorizations of $44,758 for computer hardware and software. General fund appropriations of $4,152 and authorizations for $3,848 for the purchase of information technology peripheral devices. General fund appropriations of $148,210 to purchase information technology peripheral devices specifically for the Northern Nevada Veterans Home. And general fund appropriations of $66,640 for the installation of water backflow prevention devices and the widening of an interior door for the Northern Nevada Veterans Home. I would note that during testimony provided during the hearing, it was indicated that the department would request to remove $31,871,000 for a backflow preventer. And as such, Section 4 would be reduced from $66,640 to $34,769 for the removal of that backflow prevention device that had already been funded by the Interim Finance Committee. Madam Chair, that is the only amendment.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 505? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 505.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hatteke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Haven. Next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 508.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 508 was heard by the committee on May 19th. It makes appropriations to the Division of Parole and Probation of the Department of Public Safety for the following: $325,338 for the replacement of computer hardware and software, $1,748,394 for the replacement of radio equipment, $225,733 for the replacement of guns and associated equipment, $443,520 for the replacement of tasers, and $2,391,803 for the continued replacement of the offender tracking information technology system. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you, members. Any comments or questions on Assembly Bill 508? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 508.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblyman Watts. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Dickman. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 509.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 509 was heard by the committee on May 19th. It makes an appropriation from the General Fund and Highway Fund to the Investigations Division of the Department of Public Safety for the following. General Fund appropriations of $355,728 and Highway Fund appropriations of $33,443 for replacement vehicles. General Fund appropriations of $228,634 and Highway Fund appropriations of $15,004 for replacement radio equipment. General Fund appropriations of $21,978 and Highway Fund appropriations of $2,997 for replacement cameras. General Fund appropriations of $109,368 and Highway Funds of $3,871 for the replacement of computer hardware and software, and General Fund appropriations of $41,760 and Highway Fund appropriations of $4,320 for the replacement of tasers. There are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 509? Seeing none, with that, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 509.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadagi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Gorlow. The next item on our work session agenda is Assembly Bill 510.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 510 was heard by the committee on May 18th. It provides highway funds to the Department of Motor Vehicles for the following: $274,079 for the automation budget for replacement office furniture and equipment, approximately $1.8 million for the automation budget for replacement computer hardware and software, printers, network switches, and fiber connection. $200,181,000 to the department's transformation effort budget for replacement office furniture and equipment. $15,546 for the department transformation effort replacement computer hardware and software. $8,632 for the motor carrier division for replacement replacement office furniture and equipment. $33,660 for the motor carrier division replacement computer hardware and software. $2,590 for hearing office budget replacement office furniture and equipment. $7,568 for the hearing office budget for replacement of computer hardware and software and the renewal of software licenses. $475,886 from the division for the Division of Field Services for the replacement of office furniture and equipment. $719,292 for the Division of Field Services for replacement computer hardware and software. $190,074 for the Division of Compliance Enforcement for the replacement of office furniture and equipment. $167,546 for the Division of Compliance Enforcement for the replacement of computer hardware and software. $21,912 for the Division of Central Services for the replacement of office furniture and equipment. $294,069 for the Division of Central Services for replacement computer hardware and software. Continuing on, $28,369 for the Division of Research and Project Management for replacement of office furniture and equipment. $15,978 for the Division of Research and Project Management for replacement of computer hardware and software. $6,147 for the Office of the Director for replacement of office furniture and equipment, $46,682 for the Office of the Director for replacement computer hardware as well as software, $167,730 for the Administrative Services Division for replacement office furniture and equipment, $159,146 for Administrative Services Division for replacement computer hardware, $4,024 for the Administrative Services Division to purchase expedited mail equipment. I would note that there was an amendment that was proposed by the agency as follows. The agency recommends Section 3 be revised to $205,610. Section 4 be revised to $15,208. Section 12 be revised to $168,041. And Section 15 to be revised to $27,985. This would revise total highway fund appropriations to $4,635,173. And that is the only amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 510.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Watts. And we're almost finished. Almost. The next item on our agenda, our work session agenda, will be Assembly Bill 511.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 511 was heard by the committee on May 18th. It provides general funds to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health for the following. $2,552 to the Family Planning Budget for replacement computer and hardware, $159,355 for the Community Health Services Budget for replacement computer hardware and software. For the Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services Budget, approximately $13.3 million for deferred maintenance, $790,431 for the replacement of computer hardware and software, $312,817 for replacement laboratory equipment, $179,035 for replacement utility cart and ice maker. For the Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services budget, the bill recommends $611,310 for deferred maintenance, $398,960 for replacement of computer hardware and software, and also for Lakes Crossing Center budget, $88,121 for replacement computer hardware and software, $151,500 for deferred maintenance. For the rural clinics budget, the bill recommends $347,494 for replacement computer hardware and software, $96,183 for replacement office furniture equipment, $35,736 for the replacement of telephone equipment. I would note that there is a proposed amendment to this bill. In Section 6, the recommendation is to change the amount from $611,310 to $264,870 as a result of projects that were funded with money committees closed in the budget for the department. And that is the only amendment in this bill.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 511? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 511.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Bacchus. And we'll go to the last bill on our morning agenda. That's Assembly Bill 512.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 512 was heard by the committee on May 18th. It provides appropriations from the general fund to the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services for the following: general fund appropriations of $551,505 and authorizations of $1,355,426 for the Welfare Administration budget to purchase computer hardware and software. General fund appropriations of $281,644 and authorizations of $688,879 for the Division of Administration's budget for software and upgrades to the division's information technology systems. General fund appropriations of $825,817 and authorizations of approximately $1.8 million in the Welfare Field Services budget for replacement computer hardware and software. General fund appropriations of approximately $16.4 million and authorizations of approximately $31.9 million in the Child Support Enforcement Program budget for information technology modernization projects. Madam Chair, I do not believe this bill has any amendments recommended.
Thank you. Members, any questions, comments on Assembly Bill 512? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 512.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadeke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama. Members, that is the last bill for work session on our morning calendar. As I stated at the beginning of our meeting, we will stand in recess and we'll be back later sometime today at the call of the chair.